Now, is this where you want it to be
Yep.
from?
Start right there.
We're going to start with this.
Yep.
All right, let me make sure. I'm on. Yeah, we're going to start this video. You got it?
Yeah, I'll be around just a minute.
You don't have it. One last time.
NEFSA is comprised of wild seafood harvesters across all of them.
Well, I'm from the New England Fishermen Stewardship Association. My name is Jerry Lehman. I'm from Harpswell, Maine. I've been commercial fishing here in New England, well, since I was knee-high of a grasshopper. I started inshore, lobstering, sea urchining, urchin diving. We did sea mossing. I'm a fifth-generation commercial fisherman. My family and everybody in our family has done nothing but commercial fish all over the New England coast, the Grand Banks, even down to South America, tuna fishing. I created the New England Fishermen Stewardship Association along with my fellow fishermen. Offshore wind was one of the bigger pushing points that we had. NOAA has been cutting back the commercial fisheries allowable catches, which is keeping wild, hard, healthy product off the American dinner table. NEFSA is an alliance of wild harvesters of the waters off of New England dedicated to educating the public about how best to manage our seafood resources through sound science and the best practices of conservation used by fishermen with a view towards economic well-being, ecosystem sustainability, and the U.S. food securities. I'm going to open this up with just a quick 10-minute video. This kind of explains a little bit about NEFSA, what we're about, and what we're here to fight for.
NEFSA is comprised of wild seafood harvesters across all of our New England fisheries. We exist to advocate for policy that protects the future of our marine resources and the communities that depend on them. As stewards, we're responsible for looking out for our resources, not just today, but for the next generation. Stewards know that a short-term payoff isn't worth the long-term loss of our natural resources. That's why we oppose foreign profiteers polluting our waters in the name of offshore wind development. Before signing over our ocean to the highest bidder, there are questions we should answer. Questions like, how will installing this infrastructure change the environment? How will marine life survive the industrial urbanization of the ecosystem that it depends on?
Ørsted has been bulldozing the ocean floor with the Osbit PLP 240 for South Fork Wind Farm, which is on glacial moraine, which is considered specific spawning grounds for southern New England cod, which is one of 5 distinct populations of cod. Bloomberg covered it. There was a letter written by the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, NEMS, National Marine Fisheries Service, telling BOEM that they foresee if they can do this, if they do their job, if they pile drive, there will be population level decreases of cod that would be extremely serious to the continued population of the species. The Osbit PLP 240, it bulldozed all over Cox's Ledge before National Marine Fisheries Service even know that they were there. It was a situation of beg for forgiveness as opposed to ask for permission.
How will fish and marine mammals navigate the labyrinth of mooring chains, floating platforms, and electrical cables for thousands of giant turbines? How will the ocean as a whole be affected by millions of gallons of water being heated up to 95 degrees by the offshore wind cooling stations? What about all the larvae being exposed to that hot water or exposed to the EMF from the cables? How will our food security be impacted by the loss of access to sustainable wild seafood?
What's the carbon footprint for catching a fish in Norway, then flying it over here, then trucking it to your grocery store? Before long, there ain't gonna be a US fisherman. Without a baseline prior study, we are literally walking in the dark here. I mean, sprinting in the dark, you know, eventually we're gonna hit a wall.
If you've been to New Bedford and seen this foreign garbage that they're throwing in that ocean, it will make you sick to your stomach.
This is today about celebrating that offshore wind is really happening. It's going to turn this northeastern wind into green, safe, American, and nice energy. When installed, these turbines are as large as 3 statues of liberties. This is only the first towers. Much more components will arrive.
No true fisherman can sit and witness what's going on the bottom on their daily basis and not be disheartened.
The bombardment of our waters with low-frequency sound from the seismic survey vessels is already affecting shellfish.
They're destroying an ecosystem under the guise of saving the environment.
We're getting green lights for these boats to go out here and destroy the environment. These survey boats that are coming up. Let me tell you something. I go out there fishing and that survey boat follows, and all of a sudden I'm catching scallops that are now coming up dead. Nothing has changed out there except the wind survey operations. As soon as they show up, my fishing dies.
There was survey boats there. We noticed that there was a lot of dead scallops. They were coming up what we call clappers. There were scallops that weren't open, but full of sand and mud. And you've always seen those before, but a couple a day this year, 16 or 20 dead ones in every bushel, that adds up. You know, by the end of the day, it's an extra 14 or 15 bushels. And that's something that I've never seen before. And I don't think most of these guys have either.
They're dead. They're gone. There's nothing in the shell, just solid shell.
The ongoing survey work is clearly disorienting marine mammals and contributing to their untimely deaths, desperate as the offshore wind lobby is to deny that.
It seems like they'll just make up anything to make the project look good.
Here, retired government scientist Dr. Bob Stern talks about the massive impact on whales being observed in the mid-Atlantic.
There have been a recent spike in whale and dolphin deaths that have occurred off the New Jersey and the New York coasts. Potential cause of that was the vessel surveys that are ongoing right now off the coast. And this was not a new issue for us. We had commented to the National Marine Fisheries Service over a year ago, before any of this started, that they were underestimating the impacts from these vessel surveys. Nevertheless, they went ahead, they approved them. So when we saw the whales washing on shore, we were doubly concerned that we had alerted people to this, but it was ignored. The agency since claimed that there's no evidence to link the vessel surveys to the whale and dolphin deaths. But we believe there is evidence. You just have to look for that evidence. And we have done that. Almost everywhere, with a few exceptions, whenever there was a whale death, there was at least one and more of these survey vessels present. So there is a correlation between when and where the whales died and the vessel presence. And this is just a piece of the evidence that we've assembled regarding the vessel surveys. We believe there's ample connections between the increased vessel survey, the spike in the whale deaths, to certainly warrant a thorough investigation. And we have tried to go through in a systematic way and illuminate for people these pieces of evidence. And we do have a report on this, which we're making available. It points to the vessel surveys as the most likely cause of the whale deaths. And we believe that the sites on the boards right now do violate a number of environmental statutes. The Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and a number of state statutes as well. Regarding myself, I used to work in Washington for the Energy Department, managing the office that was responsible for making sure that the department's environmental impact statements were good. And by good, I mean that the impact statement is supposed to disclose fully all the good and the bad environmental impacts. The legal requirement is a full disclosure of environmental impacts, whether you like that or not. When I first saw how these projects were being presented, I did not see that full disclosure. In fact, I saw the opposite. I saw unsupported statements. You've heard, for example, that we need to do these projects to address climate change. But the real fact of the matter is these projects will do absolutely nothing for climate change. And that's not just me speaking. That is actually statements made by the federal agency, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, in some of their final environmental impact statements. In terms of where the world is headed on climate change, when you actually look at the science, the only effect of these projects, for example, on sea level rise, is to delay whatever sea level rise is coming, not reduce it. And those delays are in terms of weeks, perhaps months. There has never been any turbine like this removed. We have no experience worldwide with the dismantling and removal of a turbine this size. The federal agency, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, can decide to leave some turbines in place. They can allow them to be toppled in place and left on the seabed. And so there is no hard and fast requirement to even remove the structures, much less the cabling and the substations.
The effects of filling our oceans with these turbines and cables are far-reaching. Today's presentation will highlight energy concerns that all ratepayers need to be aware of.
I think you may have heard that electric costs will go down. That is kind of impossible. In fact, this is probably the most expensive way right now to produce electric power.
There's going to be senior citizens that aren't going to be able to afford their power. They're on a fixed income. It doesn't make any sense why they're pushing this so hard. And the amount of money behind these projects, it just seems like one big scam.
And this idea that foreign government-owned energy companies, Statoil, which is now Equinor, 67% owned by the Norwegian government, Ørsted, which is 51%.
Their former name is Dong, Danish Oil and Natural Gas. You have Atlantic Shores. They're owned by Shell Gas and EDF Renewables. You have Empire Wind. It's BP Gas.
It's a giant Ponzi scheme.
These are the oil companies.
Now, that's just a short video. Now, NEFSA's concerns are concerns of every commercial fisherman here in New England. I mean, what does a commercial fisherman in New England bring to you, the US consumer? We bring wild, heart-healthy product that's good for you and your families. Very little people know that NOAA's even admitting that 82% of our seafood is now imported. 18% of our seafood is now only domestic. State of Maine just had 2 major storms. We've lost pretty much 50% of our infrastructure. Now we're already working and combating to regroup to get our infrastructure back up and running to try to keep wild, hard, healthy product. NOAA even put out last March of 23 with Rhoda saying that if all energy resources were to be built, we would lose 68% commercial fisheries displacement. Well, just for me in our state in Maine, I mean, the third largest industry in the state of Maine is lobstering. It's over $1 billion industry. You lose 68% of that, that's $680 million out of the community just in the state of Maine alone. Now, we can network that across New Hampshire and Massachusetts too. I mean, right here, down in Vineyard Wind, you're going to directly impact your lobstermen. That's going to have direct impacts to you getting Wild Heart Healthy product on the American dinner table and your family's dinner table for the long term. Anybody know how to shut this thing? Help? Oh, just gotta shut this one. All right. Right now, in the Gulf of Maine, we are waiting for the final WEAs for more floating offshore wind technology to be put in the Gulf of Maine. The Gulf of Maine, the green area, is where they're looking for wind development. Well, the problem is, I've been fishing the Gulf of Maine ever since 2000 full time. I've spent 220 to 240 days a year at sea. Now, back in the 70s, when we had other organizations in all the world fisheries here, we were overfishing. You fast forward to 2000, we started to cut back the fleet. There's very few fishermen left here in New England. These are the men and women who spend 220 to 240 days a year out there bringing Wild Heart Healthy product to the American dinner table. I have logbooks for the last 23 years using the same cod end that will show you that the catches in these areas have all increased over 23 years, but yet we are reducing our catch limits here. The science is not complete. It just can't be. During COVID, NOAA's Bigelow vessel did no surveys. So in 2019 to 2020, nothing was done. 2022 came along. Well, our fall assessment was only 82% complete. Well, in the Gulf of Maine, that only acquired 42 tows at 3 knots apiece for 20 minutes. That's 42 nautical miles. Well, the Gulf of Maine is a 36,000 square mile area. We literally only looked at 1/12 of 1%, but we're drawing conclusions, and we did a reduction in the catchable limits of haddock by 82% based on 1/12 of 1%. And now we're drawing conclusions on offshore wind. We don't know. What I do know is facts. The fact is I was out there with the same net for 23 years watching this over and over again. We know there's more fish out there than we've seen in 20 years, but we're being restricted for bringing it to you, the US consumer. This is just one of the problems. The Gulf of Maine is a counterclockwise spinning gyre. The currents and the nutrients flow from the Bay of Fundy, which run all the way down towards Nantucket, where it hits the Area 1. When it rides up the Georges Bank shoals, it hits the deep water frontage from the east, which gives it a counterclockwise spin. It's an entire counterclockwise spinning cycle. It's like a washing machine. So when we start to build anything in this area, the long-term effects are all the larval and all the spatial copepods, ichthyoplankton, and the phytoplankton will be directly impacted, and will be changing the environment through invasive species as well. Blue mussels and barnacles will grow on these floating structures. These are floating turbines. They're asking for the Gulf of Maine as well. So you're talking at least 1,500 turbines. That's 700 feet of water with 7-to-1 scope. So that means you're talking 15,000 feet of chain per turbine. Now you times that by 1440. That's a lot of obstruction for a bunch of whales. I didn't even give you the cables. We did the math on this. We figured if you ran out of Portland, Maine, you can go to Miami, back to Portland, Maine, back to Miami, and possibly enough slack to get to Key West as well, and for ending the chains. That's going to be an obstacle course. And to get you more on the technical details, I brought George Stover along with me. He's a commercial fisherman, lobsterman from the state of Maine. He's also got a background in power plant operations maintenance. So I'll just hand it over to him to finish up. Thank you.
Wow. The room filled up quick and I've got 5 minutes to do a 10-minute presentation. Sorry about that, but this is the most important piece. I was just, my background is I got 40 some odd years running power plants. I am the enemy, sorry. But I've worked all over the world. I've worked in Maine. I've worked in the Middle East. I ran Middle East operations for a valve company out of Houston. But what I looked at here, what I got involved with this was just because the fishermen really don't understand the technical side of a power plant. And this is a power plant. So I'm just gonna dumb it down to fishermen to my level. How do I start this? Speaking of dumb. How do we go? Go ahead.
You have another slideshow?
This one, I want to go ahead with
This
this
one, okay.
insert. Oh, slideshow from from current slide.
From current slide.
We advance it right here.
Yeah, you can space bar or this.
Okay, well, this is the most important piece. I've got very limited time. And the lady before me stole about 80% of my presentation anyways. So this is a high voltage transmission system. Make no mistake of that. They call it a cable corridor. Are you kidding me? This is all the way up to 345. They didn't disclose any information. They said it would be between 220 and 345. 345 is the backbone of all electricity in New England. That is the highest voltage. That runs state to state. So if you look at this, they sort of dumbed it down to 0.7 of a mile. Well, I just sort of did a little math there, and that's about 12 football fields wide. What could go wrong here? What would be the impact of that? That is just amazing. So if you're looking at this, I differ a little bit for what I saw in my limited research. I'm not a cable expert, but these cables can run up to 90 C, which is 194 F. So this is variable power. So if you load this up, I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around 180 degrees, 5 cables, 12 football fields wide coming to shore. That's just a cable corridor, right? Ah, wow. That is just amazing. That is really, you're putting radiant heat in the floor of the ocean. And really the array is the same thing. But then I got across the Brattle report. And then it came to me that this was just information about this one project, and they were looking at a project in a singular fashion. No, my point here is, I'll go through it pretty quick, but collectively, if you read the environmental impact, I read this whole report. It was probably a week of my life I will never get back again. Very little information, but on the cause and effects, the impact on the environmental was very, very informative. So if you're looking at variable power, you're 100% right. I ran combined cycle machines. They operated around 58 megawatts a minute. I also ran big utility boilers. They run about 3 megawatts a minute. They're Ferraris of the generation world. I mean, they're very, very advanced. They're very clean for fossil. I burned oil, nuclear, trashed energy. I've been involved in just about every segment of it. But if you look at some of the cost of this, I won't repeat what's already been told here, but this is 6 times the cost of a combined cycle plant. You'll never get your money back. According to EIA, which is a government report, the government ought to read their own reports. The maintenance is some of the highest fixed operation and maintenance costs of any generating equipment built today. $115.26 per kilowatt per year, every year. That's an astounding number. A little bit about gas turbines, right? They're going to start, I think this is a smaller one, but they're pretty much the same. They're in meters per second, so I sort of extrapolated that out on the side there. They get the full load about 26 miles an hour. Just to talk about variable, what's happening to the grid? I ran dispatchable machines. I need 200 megawatts now. Here you go. Oh, what's going to happen with wind? Well, I have to wait until the wind comes up. Today it's 5 to 15 with gusts to 20. These things don't reach full load till they hit 26 miles per hour. So in the back of this, what's happening is the wind is going 5 to 15. I got sweaty hands on a combined cycle unit going as fast as we can, hoping nothing happens. This is very unstable for the grid. Just personally from someone that's worked in this field my whole life. So at 25, 26 miles per hour, these things all shut off. Well, you better have something sitting in the background to run, or you're not going to be able to run your computers or whatever it is you want lights are for. So these are all facts right out of the COP, construction operation plan. These are going to be driven down to about 180 feet, and which was already discussed. Think about commissioning. How are you going to get these out of the ground? You're not going to. Come on, let's get real. Scour protection is going to be put in, which really I would never be able to do that if I have an oceanfront property. Come on, you know, they're dumping rocks. I'll go as quick as I can and make sense here. But this is miles of hot submarine cable all going to shore and the array. I'll add a little bit to your information about the array. But talking a little bit more about oil out there, there's not a lot of facts on design, output, cable, voltage, any of that. They gave an approximate, excuse me, over 3,000 gallons of oil in each wind turbine. We talked about radar disturbance. I won't go into that a little bit, but 6% of the array, the cables are going to come out. They drill down the casing first, the pedestal, and then you still got to bring the cable up and in. So I'm guessing they're going to cut a hole in the side of it and bring it up. But as those cables come up, you're exposing the cable to EMF, the environment to EMF from the cable. So I'm guessing they didn't say that they're going to use mats and then they're going to put riprap around it. Just a quick note, this is right out of the COP. The transformer is a big transformer. Each one of these and each one of the wind turbines, a little over 11,000 gallons. That's a lot of oil out there. I think this will be ready for anybody at the end here. This is just a standard. I don't have a pointer, but if you look and you can count, there's about 10 wind turbines a daisy chain together. So let's say they're all 10 megawatts. The first one is at around 10 megawatts, and cable temperatures are really dependent upon the load, not the voltage. So as I add load, the first one is going to give 10. So when we get the number 7, we got 70 megawatts. And I think we read the same report of 36 degrees, because that's the same number I got. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, the cable size increases, obviously, because you got more load. So by the time you get to 9 and 10, you got 90, 100 megawatts, you're up to 36 degree over ambient. Some of that's in the mud, some of it's rising up in and out of these wind turbines. Scour protection, ever stood on the beach and a wave comes over and touches your feet? What happens with the sand underneath your feet? It's no longer there. Same problem here. Problem is, though, if enough scours away, they become unstable. And by the way, the new class of wind turbines are having all kinds of structural issues. I'm not going to get into radar. You did a great job on radar. I'll just skip through this. But I won't skip through this. This is AIS. This is right out of the report. This is AIS. This is tracks of vessels going in and out of this area. And they only showed the one project. There's what, 13? Am I right on 13? Anyways, what could go wrong here when you can't use your radar in a storm? This spring, I think I spent 6 weeks leaving my mooring, not seeing land until I got back in the evening. What could go wrong? Electrical service platforms are nothing but switch yards, right? The generator makes electricity, let's say 10 megawatts. The 10 megawatts, I'm gonna get real quick here. Gosh, he's right on me already. I know, sorry. This can be read, but there's a lot. This is a breakdown of there's all kinds of diesel fuel. They have to have backup diesel generators. What if the cable goes down, right? They have to have it. I can't remember, there's over 5,000 gallons of diesel fuel alone on each electrical service platform. All this is these 10 wind turbines come together in one cable to a breaker in the switch yard or service platform, and that breaker is tied on a common bus to a transformer, which ups the voltage, shifts it off to shore. Scour protection, just dumping rocks. Nice, wish I could do that. Inner array. We've all seen these pictures. Everything about these projects is protecting the cable, protecting this equipment. It has nothing about the environment. And the matting, I'm not going to go into any depth other than as they install these, the lobsters and crabs and all the eggs will hide in this, and then they energize the cable. That will be quite a shock for the creatures in the way. But just a couple of quick notes here. The jet, this is right out of the report, runs between 3,000 and 12,000 gallons of salt water per minute. This is salt water with eggs, plankton, whatever is there, and it's going to be used as a high pressure water jet. They're gonna dig down 6 feet by 6 feet wide. That's 0.6 to 2.5 billion gallons of water for this project alone. Everything that's in train is going to die. And me trying to keep things simple, 6 by 6, it equated out to, I can think in dump trucks, right? 542 13-yard dump trucks per mile until you get to the dredging. They're going down 25, 26 feet. So multiply that times 5. That's a lot of dump trucks waiting to dump it back in there, but I don't think it's going to go back in the hole. So again, the 36, you talked about that. I'm not going to. And then just one little quick thing on submarine noise. She's on me again. It's really the low frequency vibration, but take all of these noises, take the noise of the operation side, which they said very little about. You've got a wind turbine that every one of them is different. They all have a vibration signature. They all have a transformer. You ever heard of transformer? The same thing is going to happen in the electrical service platforms. They got transformers. They're big transformers. They're going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be vibration. They got the cable vibration. You got the cable heat, all in this one area where it used to be, let's talk about the right whale, it used to be their backyard. Wow, what a shock. Their backyard and their kitchen are now going to be full of wind turbines. And I better get out of here because I'm getting the dirty look. But no, that's no problem. But as you can see, this is right from Bohm. Even if you bury it to 6 feet, you still have, you have electric motor forces there. I'll say it has to be around 20 feet for my research before it really negates the EMF. And with that, commissioning. The last line here, which is most important, decommissioning. I read through the whole thing and every one of them said retire in place. And the very last page, 960, I don't know, I can't remember the page, but it was quite a ways and I was trying to stay awake. Whatever is best for the environment. Well, you know what they're going to do. They want to leave them there, right? So I would suggest what's best for the